Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha, Jaya Giri Varadari. Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janarandana. Jaya Yamunatira Vanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha, Jaya Giri Varadari. Allah, Jaya Giri Varadari. Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana. Jaya Yamunatira Vanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parirajikacharya Stotra Shat Shri Shri His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi. See. We are going to recite the beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 13, Description of the Descendants of Dhruva Maharaj, starting with 36 and going to 37. Nasta prayeshta badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utama shloki bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Oh, what's the other one? About before reciting the Bhagavatam, which is a Merry Meaning Conquest. Does anyone remember the start of that shloka? Can help me out? One right before that one. Narayanam namaskritya narom chaiva narottamam devam saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Tasmat, I'm going to read this verse completely and then we'll do repetition on the next verse. Tasmat purusha utashto hemamalam alambaraha hiranmayena patrena siddhimadaya payasam. As soon as the oblation was offered in the fire, a person appeared from the fire altar wearing a golden garland and a white dress. He was carrying a golden pot filled with rice boiled in milk. Ooh. Verse 37. We can see it now? Yeah. Savipranu mato raja. Savipranu mato raja. Grihit vanjalinaudanam. Avagraya mudha yukta. Pradat patnya udaradi. Savipranu mato raja. Grihit vanjalinodanam. Avagraya mudha yukta. Pradat patnya udharidi. Savipranu mato raja. Grihid vanjalinodanam. Avagraya mudha yukta. Pradat patnya udharidi. All assembled brahmanas, please chant the Vedic hymns. Savipranu mato raja. Grihidvanjalinodanam. Vagraya muda yuktaha. Padatpadnyarihi Saviprano Muttoraja Vyadvanjalinodanam Avagraya Mudayukta Pralatpadnya Udaradi Moigal Saviprano Muttoraja Vidvanjalinodanam Vagraya Mudayukta Vyatpadnya Udharadihi. Sam Sindhu, you want to get in on this? Savipranumato Raja Grihidvanjalinodanam Avagraya Mudayukta Ratpadnya Udharadi. Grihidvanjalinodanam Avagraya Mudayukta Radatpadnya Udar Saha He Vipra of the Brahmanas Anumataha taking permission Raja the king Grihitva taking Anjalina in his joined palms Odanam rice boiled in milk Avagraya after smelling Muda with great delight Yuktaha fixed Pradat offered Patnyai to his wife Udaradihi liberal-minded. The king was very liberal, and after taking permission from the priests, he took the preparation in his joined palms, and after smelling it, he offered a portion to his wife. The word Udhardi is significant in this connection. The wife of the king, Sunita, was not fit to accept this benediction. Yet the king was so liberal that without hesitation, he offered to his wife the boiled rice in milk prasad received from the Jagya Purush. Of course, everything is designed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As will be explained in later verses, this incident was not very favorable for the king. Since the king was very liberal, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to increase his detachment from the material world, willed that a cruel son be born of the queen, so that the king would have to leave home. As stated above, Lord Vishnu fulfills the desires of the karmis as they desire. But the Lord fulfills the desires of a devotee in a different way, so that the devotee may gradually come to him. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Dadami bugi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. The Lord gives the devotee the opportunity to make progress further and further, so that he may come back home, back to Godhead. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo naha mukum karoti vachalam pangum gayate giram yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Nirataranam Paramanamaram Shri Chaitanya Ishram Hari Om Tat Sat Sa Vipranumato Raja Grihitvanjalinodanam Avagraya Muda Yuktaha Pradat Patnya Udaridihi. The king was very liberal, and after taking permission from the priests, he took the preparations in his joined palm, and after smelling it, he offered a portion to his wife. Before I speak, I'd like to ask for the blessings of all the devotees, especially the senior devotees, Chaitanya Mataji and Goklandra Prabhu, and about all the devotees. Their prayers are definitely heard by the Lord, and like Lord Chaitanya, when he was teaching the different meanings of the verse to Sanat Goswami. What verse was that? The Atma Rama verse that he told Sanat Goswami. He said, actually, in your association, even more knowledge has come to me, because in transcendental knowledge, the speaker is important, but also equally important is the hearer. And actually, a sincere hearer, if they're praying to the Lord and they sincerely want to hear something, even if there's a not so good speaker, the speaker can actually be empowered by the hearer's presence. And so, therefore, I'm grateful also. It's the best opportunity that I get to review and study the Vedic literatures. I'm not such a good scholar like that, so it's always good to have the excuse that I have to give class, and then my mind will listen and try to understand something. And so may I say everything in line with Guru Parampara, and maybe you'll benefit from hearing about the beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam. So here we are. Dhruva Maharaj went back to Godhead, stepping over death, and we're in his talking about his exalted lineage. And we've gone down through a few generations. Now we've got to this king. Don't even remember his name, and his wife Sunita. And I don't think so. This is down the line. This is the son of the son of the son, maybe even a few more generations of Dhruva. A big family tree, but we're following one branch, and we reached here. And in the Bhagavatam and in the Vedas in general, there's a lot of the conflicts arise from the need of a son. Indeed, even the Mahabharata, which the Bhagavad Gita is in, the whole Mahabharata starts with the problem that Rasanath Govinda Prabhu was nicely explaining a few days ago about how, one king, one prince, Bhishma, wasn't going to have any offspring, but they needed to have an heir to the throne. It said that collecting money, collecting opulence is troublesome, but then even more troublesome than collecting it is safeguarding it. And so therefore, to maintain your kingly prestige and opulence is extremely troublesome. And one of the biggest pains of being a king is that you have to worry about who's going to be in the next generation. So the king, even if the king has perfect control, time is always there eroding everything. And they need to have a proper plan of succession. And so that time was dwindling and stresses were high. And so they invited actually Vyasadeva. And they said, and this is a rule which isn't followed in Kali Yuga, but they weren't in Kali Yuga yet, they were in Dwapara Yuga, where the brother can impregnate his brother's wife for the sake of continuing the kingly lineage. And so the king had 2 wives and a maidservant. And Vyasadeva asked, shall I go and make myself presentable? It'll take like a year of work, then I can come back. And they said, no, actually, we immediately need the heirs to the throne. We can't risk losing power, because if there's no heirs and then there's a power vacuum, that creates a lot of chaos. And Kshatriyas, although they're very strong, they use their strength to protect. So they don't want the citizens to unnaturally have all the chaos of a power vacuum. So out of that concern and of maintaining their kingdom up, so therefore the first wife, she closed her eyes, and therefore a blind son, Dhritarashtra, was born. And then the second wife, understanding how that screwed things up, she left her eyes open, but became very pale. So she birthed Pandu, who was known to be very pale. And then, of course, the maidservant performed the duties without any kind of any conscious reaction that would disturb the complexion of the child, and they had Vidura. But of course, because Vidura was born of the maidservant, he wasn't necessarily considered to be on the throne, although he was, as we know, he's such an excellent advisor. And actually, we're hearing him speak with Maitreya Muni right now. So it's even benefiting us. And of course, anything that Vyasadeva does is going to benefit all of us, because that was the purpose of his incarnation. And some other issues with children, like Chitraketu. Do we all remember Chitraketu? Chitraketu? He wanted a son. He couldn't have it. He had like 10 million wives or something like that. I don't know if that's some sort of metaphor or exaggeration or not. But yeah, they lived longer, and if we hear about they had mystic powers and different things like that, it's not so impossible, but it is remarkable. And once you have 10 million wives, if you try to have children with all 10 million of them, you can't. The kings of Europe would try to have a child, and then if the wife couldn't do it, they'd execute them. Oh, they're nonsense. But if you go through like 10 wives and have to execute them all, sometimes then you got to maybe realize maybe the problem's with the king, not with the queen. So Chitraketu, understanding that, and funny enough, with all these problems with the son, it's always Narad Muni that comes around and either stirs up trouble or helps resolve the trouble. So in this case, Narad Muni comes with his friend, and they say, okay, you're not supposed to have a son, but I guess if you really want to, we'll give you a son. And they gave him a son, and their son's name is Harsha Shoka, which means happy and sad. First, because he'll bring happiness because you were sad, you were lamenting you didn't have a son. So then, of course, that's how material happiness works. We hanker after something, and then we get it. That's going to give us a nice hit of dopamine, a nice, feeling good for about 24 hours maybe, depending on what you get. You want the new iPhone, finally get it. Oh, it's so cool. Look at that. Look at this, the color, and so many gigabytes and blah, blah. And then by the next day, maybe the next week, then it's exactly the same as your old phone. It's that's all you get. Then harsha, shoka. Then the sadness, the lamentation. Because although you have a son, you are not meant to have a son. And therefore the son is going to go. And that's going to also upset you. So not only do we not really get that much happiness, but then we start to lament because whatever we get, because time is eating away at everything, then we lose it. And so that's what happened with Chittaketu. Of course, we hear about all the sons of Devaki and Vasudev, Vasudev. And we hear about the Prachetas and how they're all of them were born and then of Daksha, and then Narad Muni convinced them to be Brahmachars like a few times. There was a whole batch of children, and then they're all made into renunciants that did not increase the thing, so Narad Muni got cursed. So like this, there's many episodes of issues centering around a conflict, centering around having a son, and Narad Muni somehow in there. Hiranyakashipu, of course, they conceived the child at the wrong time, or Aditya and Kasyapa, they conceived at the wrong time, and of course had the wonderful children Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, who made the world very happy because they forced the birth of, or they forced the appearance of Nrsingadev. And one central point of this is that, of this story now, that we can't avoid Sunita and this king. They can't avoid their karma, their fate. And like Prabhupada says, of course, ultimately the Lord is controlling everything. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Everything's coming from the Lord. So the Lord can change things, but He can't change the lessons that we are meant to learn. Like when you start doing devotional service with the Lord, Yamaraj will take your file, he'll delete it from his computer, and he'll send it to the Lord. He'll send it to Krishna. Krishna now has your file. So he understands everything that you deserve, that you need to get. But you still have to learn your lessons. The Lord can't, if you did something wrong to someone else, the Lord can't have that person feel okay until you actually paid something. But of course, the devotees get a good deal. Like one time, a devotee got a cut. They cut some of their finger off. I can't remember exactly. Someone told me this last week. And then they went to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, "Oh, you were meant to get your head cut off." And the devotee just thought that was like, "Oh yeah, they always say that." And of course, we as devotees, we learn this very beautiful principle of how to remain humble. When something bad happens, we see it as Krishna's mercy, that we understand it's a good thing because we got a good deal out of it. So yes, of course, if I got cut, Prabhupada just said my head's going to cut off. He didn't, but later he took it, he saw an astrologer. The astrologer said, "What is going on? You should be dead right now. You're not alive right now. Like according to your chart, you died like so back when." And it was like when he got the cut. So he realized Prabhupada wasn't playing. Prabhupada was actually like mystically somehow knew about his what he was supposed to get. And so devotees have this beautiful philosophy: Tate nukampam susamikshamano bunjanae makritam vipakam idvagavapur bivridana namaste jiveta yomukte pate sadhaya bhak. That we're due our just rewards, and if we accept that humbly and just depend on the mercy of the Lord, then we're actually eligible for the blessings of immortality. And Prabhupada's the perfect example in any kind of principle, any kind of quality, any kind of philosophy that we're speaking. If we're any times we're like confused of how it should be done, I mean, Krishna, he told us philosophy. Lord Chaitanya showed us a lot of how to act it, but then they sent Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gave us such perfect example. So Prabhupada, of this, he was giving his Guru's Vyasa Puja. This is in Science of Self-Realization. Such beautiful realizations about his Guru and teaching to people. But in the end of that, there's such a poignant paragraph that I'm just going to read it verbatim. And it illustrates this wonderful quality of humility and how to deal with whatever we have to deal with, whatever our past activities are bringing to us. This is Prabhupada speaking. We have to remember this. He says, personally, I have no hope for any direct service for the coming crores of births of the sojourn of my life. A crore means 10 million. So he says, for millions and millions and tens of millions of births, I have no hope for direct service. But I am of his Guru. But I am confident that someday or other I shall be delivered from this mire of delusion in which I am present so deeply sunk. Therefore, let me with all my earnestness pray at the lotus feet of my divine master to allow me to suffer the lot for which I am destined due to my past misdoings, but to let me have this power of recollection, that I am nothing but a tiny servant of the almighty absolute Godhead, realized through the unflinching mercy of my divine master. Let me therefore bow down at his lotus feet with all the humility at my command. Wow, what just like perfect language. You know, Prabhupada is such a good writer, and what a beautiful thing he can express in this, that as devotees, sometimes when we first become a devotee, we say, oh, I chant Hare Krishna and I get rid of all my karma, and it goes away, and I clap my hands in the kirtan and all my karma goes away. And we think, like, oh, yes, you know, such a good thing. And this is like, yes, it's true, but it's also a little bit perhaps an immature way of thinking about the situation. You want me to elevate my speaking? Oh, oops. Hare Krishna. It's not that loud. I thought it would be louder. So Prabhupada's saying, like we all think, oh, I'm going back to Godhead as soon as I die. As soon as I die, I'm going to be right there with Krishna. Prabhupada's saying, I have no hope for direct service of my Guru in crores of births. And maybe we can argue he's just poetically saying something, but this sentiment's coming out. This is the final sentiment of his Vyasa Puja. Therefore, let me pray to be allowed to suffer the lot for which I'm destined. I mean, that's one thing we can think. Every single thing that happens to us, it's getting us closer to completing our lesson. When we fully learn our lesson, then we're fit to associate with those perfected beings that we want to associate with. But until we've learned our lesson, we have to learn it somehow. And so our karma is just a teacher. And Krishna can change it. Krishna has our file. But we should understand that whatever it is, Krishna is going to, he knows everything that we need, and he has the complete power. So we should trust him that he's actually our well-wishing friend, even if he gives us a hard situation. So this is what Prabhupada is describing in the purport. Sometimes when the karmis have a desire, as long as they have the credits in their karmic bank account, Krishna's like, okay, done, take it. But when a devotee has something, even they may have so many credits. I mean, if we just chant Hare Krishna once, or we just bow down, that's so many credits actually that we're getting, if you want to look at it from a karma kandi point of view. Even, indeed, all the karma kandi stuff is only powered by the little devotion that they have to do. Vishnu, whatever they have to say in their mantras when they're doing a yajna, or they're praying to the Lord, or they're saying like 2 or 3 names in the entire thing. All that actually empowers the rest of the ritual, that the Lord will then empower the demigod to then empower the person to get their good karma. But it's different for a devotee. Then the demigods, when someone does, when it, oh, okay, this thing fell down again. Do it tighter. A devotee, they get a different deal. The demigods look at the devotee doing something, and then they want it, and then they look at the Lord. Okay, Lord, what should we do? And our acharyas are so amazing that, you know, if you look in other scriptures, they don't even really tell you the form of the Lord, and they hardly tell you what the Lord wants. It's all very vague. You know, like many Christians might say, like, oh, it's not through works, it's just faith. You just have faith that the Lord came and He came to help you, and that's it. That's faith. Or, you know, a Muslim may say, oh, like the Lord is just, He's the best. We were hearing yesterday, do they know how He's the best? The Lord is great, but do we know exactly how great He is? So our acharyas, they've not only given us the form of the Lord, the name of the Lord, the address of the Lord, the family of the Lord, the activities of the Lord, they've given us the inner psychology of the Lord. So we hear when Sanatana Goswami is being taught by Lord Chaitanya about this principle. Prabhupada says, the king was liberal, so he gave some prasad to his wife. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead wanted to increase his detachment. So the Supreme Personality of God willed that a cruel son was born. And the Lord fulfills the desires of a devotee in a different way, so the devotee may gradually come to Him. Krishna says, so this is what we hear, Lord Chaitanya is explaining this to Sanatana Goswami. If one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very foolish. Indeed, he's just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. And since I am very intelligent, why should I give such a fool material prosperity? Instead, I will induce him to take the nectar of shelter at my lotus feet and make him forget all this illusory material enjoyment. So the Lord, He'll fulfill our desires, but He'll fulfill our desires in such a way that we don't want whatever we thought we want, and we just turn more towards the Lord. And sometimes if we're not in this sadhya bhak, consciousness, tateum kampa susamikshama consciousness, then maybe we'll see, oh, this is like, what the hell is the Lord doing? This is like so painful. This is so terrible. Why is this happening? But we should realize that if the Lord's taking something away from us or putting us into a dangerous situation, that's exactly what He wants for us and exactly what we need to get what we ultimately want. We ultimately want to be blissful and happy in the association of the most beautiful and amazing people and the most wonderful land, and engage in delightful eternal pastimes. And that's what the Lord has waiting for us, but we need to be qualified for that. And so He's chipping away at all our anarthas, and sometimes it won't be very seemingly pleasant, but of course, everything that ends well is well. So most of us, there's different kinds of devotees. Most of us are sakama devotees, at least speaking for myself, that we have desires and we serve the Lord for motives. And there's devotees that are serving without desire, akama devotees. And so Krishna is so merciful that He'll take a sakama devotee and He'll turn him into an akama devotee. That's Krishna's genius. I mean, Krishna is the ultimate guru. All gurus are just speaking what Krishna wants them to speak to the individual. But guru principle is one. It's just Krishna. And so a pure devotee, the akama devotee, that we're all trying to become, our goal, like Prabhupada, pure devotee, they have no material motives, and they're simply satisfied with their service. It's like said in the 6th chapter, which if we have like an older version of Perfection of Yoga, we have at the Harinam on the back. It shows Prabhupada kind of sitting in sort of a meditative posture with his eyes closed, and it's saying when you actually reach perfection, then you experience unboundless bliss, and establish thus one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, he thinks there's no greater gain. So when we are actually established in the pure devotional service of the Lord, it's extremely blissful, and we understand that nothing else can actually compare with this at all. So therefore, we're akama. You don't have a desire. If you're finally given delicious cooked food and someone gives you a plate of vomit, there's no question of like what you're going to do. You have delicious food. So similarly, once you've experienced the actual nectar of associating with the Lord, any other kind of benediction, any other kind of thing that maybe seem very wonderful will just be terrible to you. Like we just heard Dhruva Maharaj, he was lamenting, oh dang, I have to take control of all the universe, the material universe, for 65,000 years or whatever it was. He didn't want to do that. He said immediately, I want to go to the Lord. All these other things I want were just broken pieces of glass. I thought they were gems. Sometimes if someone's trying to cheat you, they'll just get a colored piece of glass and they'll file it down nicely so it looks just like a ruby or an emerald or something. But really, it's just an extremely cheap piece of glass. He said, I originally wanted all these cheap pieces of glass, but I didn't realize there was like such a glorious diamond, such a glorious gemstone, such a glorious Chintamani jewel in your lotus feet, that's the only thing that I actually want. And so that's how the Lord changes all of us from barbarian, mongrel, parasite bacteria to Sakama devotee, to human, to Sakama devotee, to Akama, pure devotee. The Lord that's all He's doing. The entire universe is just a big factory to increase the bliss. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. And so Krishna is taking that upon Himself. Dadami Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Pritipurvagam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenamam Upayanti Te. That His devotees come into the material world, and through their interactions, they influence all the non-devotees, and many of the non-devotees then decide they want to try to start doing devotional service. They get a little faith that maybe this devotional service is better than everything else. And then through that, they do a little sincere service, and the Lord gives them the intelligence to continue. And so that's what's happening to the king and his wife. He's going to get a terrible son, King Vena, and the Brahmanas. And even though the Brahmana is spelled with the H before the M, the H is pronounced after the M, because there's a special rule that when you have the H with an N or an M, if it's before, it actually gets pronounced. So it's not Brahmanas, it's Brahmanas. It's something I heard recently. Sanskrit is also a very wonderful, fascinating language, and I wish I wasn't such a Kali Yuga reject that I could actually have better knowledge of it. And so King Venu's going to do terrible things. The Brahmanas are going to warn him. You've given up all sacrifices. You've given up all worship of the Lord. Dharma is in shambles. Please fix it, or we're going to fix you. And he said, I am the Supreme Lord. You just have to worship me. You don't have to follow any of these things. And the Brahmanas, they understood. So they all grabbed their Brahman threads, and they all just uttered Om. And they meditated on something. And King Venu was no more. And they churned his legs somehow, and some demon came out, went to the forest and ran away. All the negative energy went away. Then Prithu Maharaj came out, and we're about to hear about the wonderful activities of the Shaktivesh avatar Prithu Maharaj and his wife. And so this one more point I wanted to talk about was the boiled rice and milk prasad received from the Yagya Purush. And similar to the mantra Om chanted by the Brahmanas, which killed the evil king, in the Vedic description of reality, it's different than the modern description of reality. If you just say, oh, like analyze this pot of milk, we could say, oh, it's a golden pot, and the milk was boiled with rice, and the rice became this consistency, and let's zoom in on it with a microscope. There's like no bacteria, and it has this molecule of a vitamin, and has this molecule of a fat, and has this molecule of carbohydrates and sugar, and that's how they would analyze it, which is all well and good, but they would have to know more than just seeing it there. If you see any object and you can imagine that object, or even ourselves, in the fourth dimension, if the fourth dimension is time, then every object plotted in that time axis will then look like a snake. And so we're just looking at one little slice of time of that. But if you look in the past, that object was interacted by many different things. And then you look in the future, something will happen to it in the future. And all those are connected to that. And so there's also subtle aspects that the Vedas teach us. Krishna says he's in earth, water, fire, and air, and ether. But then also, there's other material elements, subtle material elements, which are not so easily to perceive. That's why they're called subtle. The intelligence, mind, and false ego. And so, when we're seeing the qualities of an object, we have to realize also the effects of the intelligence, the mind, and the false ego on these things. So prasad, it does look exactly the same as non-prasad. Especially if, like, let's say that someone's cooking someone cooks rice and then offers it to the Lord, and someone else cooks rice. I'm sure there's people in the hotels or restaurants close by that also cook rice. We cook rice all the time. How is the rice that we're cooking different than their rice? Our rice, if you look back in the history of that prasad rice, you'll see that the false ego is taken out of it. Because the false ego means it's not connected properly. That the person, the pujari is supposed to go through bhuta shuddhi, purification of their body, of their elements. And anyone that's wearing tilak, they also have done bhuta shuddhi. That's why Lord Chaitanya, when he was teaching his students, one didn't have tilak on his face. He said, why are you walking around with a graveyard on your face? Because he could tell that kid was not ready to study Vedic knowledge because he didn't take a bath and put on tilak. When you take a bath and put on tilak, what you're doing is purifying your body internally and externally. What do we say when we put our tilak on? Say it louder. And the last word is Namaha. So one devotee was giving a class on Namamishvaram Sachid Anandarupam. It was like a month-long seminar on Damodarastakam, and they gave a whole day's lecture just on Nama. So when you say Namaha, you're automatically saying that yes, there's something higher than me, and I'm lower than that, and I'm accepting that. So that's that realization. The more we realize it, the more it destroys the false ego. But even just admitting it is getting us on that path. And so the false ego element is decreased in that prasadam. The mind and the intelligence are thinking about Krishna. When you're cooking, you're supposed to be hearing about Krishna, meditating on Krishna. You're not supposed to be thinking, how am I going to enjoy this? You're supposed to think, how is Krishna going to enjoy this? I'm not going to taste this. I'm just going to follow recipes that I know that Krishna likes. I'm going to be hearing Krishna Katha. I'm doing this service for Krishna. And that way the mind and the intelligence are all focused on Krishna. And those are affecting that object. So then finally when that object goes on the altar and is also then has more prayers and everything with it, that actually affects it on a physical level. That's why when we take prasadam, it uplifts us, it changes our mind, and helps us to think of Krishna, helps us to do our service. And that's why it's so grating against our consciousness, degrading, if we take something cooked by a non-devotee. When the non-devotee is doing that, they just have their karmi consciousness, their false ego, ahamameti consciousness going into that. And especially what to speak of if we eat at some fast food restaurant or some place where the person is just performing it just for money, they don't even really want to be there. We're going to eat that, and then that's going to affect us. It's not, the food isn't just the simple grains that are there. It isn't just the simple ingredients that were in there. It's also the intelligence, the mind, and the false ego that are combined in there. Although we can't see it, we can understand it by perceiving its effects directly. And if anyone's been around a exalted devotee, and that exalted devotee has cooked something for them, or they've had their remnants, they can scientifically understand how their own consciousness was changed. And many times I've taken different remnants of special devotees, or when someone's cooking, you could tell when they're in extra special mood. You take that and it really hits you and uplifts you. And then there's other times when I remember I was working and I would always try to avoid, of course when you're working, everyone always, let's go out to eat, because you've been working all day, you don't want to cook, and it's lunchtime, and so they always plan these luncheon dates, and sometimes there's lunch meetings. And so I would somehow, over 2 years, I mostly avoided getting lunch, or if I went with them, I would just get a salad or something like that, and I would tell them I'm allergic to onion and garlic, so I can't eat anything. But on my last week that I was quitting, to like celebrate, my boss booked out an entire Indian restaurant and told them to cook everything without onion and garlic in the buffet. And so he kind of got me, and I wasn't so bold to like just spit in his face and say like, no. So I ended up eating that. But then I remember going to Harinam, and one of my friends who I was, we were interacting every day. He sees me every day. He's like, why do you look stoned right now? And it was because the consciousness that went into those grains was directly fighting against the consciousness that I was trying to cultivate. So when you have two conflicting energies, it's you're gonna lose a lot of your vitality and naturally energy that would normally want to come out. It's going to be stuck finding something on the inside. And so, alternatively, if you take some Jagannath Mahaprasadam, or you take some there's different levels of prasadam. There's prasadam, there's Mahaprasadam, then there's Mahaprasadam. And if you get that Mahaprasadam, you know that you've got it, because you feel so more Krishna consciousness. For some reason, you just want to chant your rounds. You just want to read. Everything becomes easy. It seems like all your doubts that you had were just like, why did I even have that doubt? It doesn't matter anymore. So these things are very important in our Krishna consciousness, especially as neophytes. Prabhupada didn't necessarily give us a regular principle to follow that, but that was one of the things he would tell people. Don't eat grains cooked by outside. Even the Chaitanya Charitamrita, don't cook grains cooked by non-devotees. Even other items, they're also influenced, but we see in the Jagya, where swaha, when you say swaha, you're throwing in grains. The fire and the grains have an intimate connection, so we avoid those more. Like some devotee was telling me, sometimes if he can't prepare his own food, then maybe he'll get a salad, but he'll never get grains. Rameshwar Prabhu. And so, of course, this prasad grains ended up giving a bad result, quote unquote. But for the vision of a devotee, nothing is good or bad, because everything is just their relationship with the Lord, if we have this beautiful attitude. And of course, the king, maybe it was bad, maybe it was painful getting a terrible son, maybe it was painful having to leave his family, but ultimately he went and attained peace and was able to get detached from the material world, because the Lord also wanted his association. So the Lord made that arrangement for him, and his family and his others, they would have to wait longer. So ultimately it was for the It was for the very good of the king. So thank you very much. There's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And Ramai Prabhu or Krishna Kripa Prabhu or Chattamai Mataji, since they're the senior devotees, they should say something. And then other devotees, if they have comments or questions, they can also say something. Please. If you'll be so merciful. Not all at once.
Hare Krishna, delightful class. Technical question. There's this precedent set where one must have a son in order to protect the lineage and, how do you say, deliver the parents. Is it true that a son is the only one that's capable of that and the daughter is not? There's no wiggle room in that?
In material consciousness, I don't know exactly. That's more of a karma kanda thing, and maybe it's true that you need a son to perform certain rituals that perhaps women wouldn't necessarily perform in the main thing, because they would maybe perform it with their husband. I can't comment much more on that. But Prabhupada said, like, he would sometimes tease Yamuna Devi. He'd say, oh, Yamuna, are women less intelligent than men? And she was very humble. She said, yes, Prabhupada. She wouldn't get disturbed at all. And like Prabhupada would then answer, yeah, but actually, since you're a devotee, you're just as intelligent as your brothers. So when we're on the devotional platform, this bodily identification matters less and less. And to the extent that we're completely pure, to that extent we're completely free from all these kind of bounds. And even we see Krishna can become your son and perform it. This is a story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or maybe not in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but with one of the devotees in there, that the Pujari has no sons, and he has no one to offer pinda for him. And so then Krishna says, okay, well, since you've been taking care of me so well, I'll offer pinda for you. So if we surrender to Krishna, all our material things will be taken care of. And even pinda, if you need a son if you want to go to the heavenly planets and enjoy there for 10 million years. If that's what you want, then you have to get a son, because what that son is, and they have to have a lineage, because every day you spend there is going to be around 6 months here, or a year. One day is 6 months, one night is 6 months. And you're going to be spending millions of years there, and you're going to need to eat every day. So every 6 months or every year, they're going to need to offer you food. And if you don't eat, then you're going to need to find some other method of sustenance. So what I've heard is that some of those denizens of the Prithvi Lokas, they get very upset at non-dharmic people because their own families became corrupted and stopped following Dharma, and they got very hungry. And when you're hungry, you can do anything. So they needed to find someone else to pay them, so they got employed by Yamaraj. And that's sometimes how a Yamaduta may get their employment. And that's why they're so happy to see someone that doesn't perform Dharma to punish them. So, but we don't want to go to Prithvi Loka. We don't want to go to the heavenly planets, Mahaloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka, Brahmaloka, Satyaloka. We don't want to go to these places. We may visit them on our sojourn back to Godhead, like we hear Gopa Kumar in Sanatan Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita. He visits all these places, But because he doesn't really want what they have, he doesn't have false ego, he wants the Lord, he's chanting his pure mantra from his pure guru. He just wants Krishna. So we just want Krishna, so ultimately, it doesn't really, whether we have a son or not, it doesn't really matter. If we're surrendering to Krishna, Krishna will figure that out eventually. And we're going to have to suffer regardless based on what we've done. So we should just accept it, like the Sumik Shimamano verse, and be fully surrendered to Krishna and accept whatever comes with that. And that will be the best thing for us. Because actually the more we suffer, the quicker it's burning through what our problems, the quicker we can learn our lesson and actually get to where we want to go. So if I told you if you had to suffer, and you could get $1 million tomorrow, but you had to suffer a lot today, otherwise it would take you 100 years to get $1 million, but you're not going to suffer as much. That's what everyone in New York is doing. They're working 15, 18 hours a day, suffering, living in the so-called, best city in the world, just so they can make a bigger salary and be more influential and things like that. So we should be willing to do that to attain our goal too, but our goal is much more lofty and ideal, and so hopefully we can impress upon them that. And I've gone 3 minutes over time. I'm terribly sorry. I will accept all those offenses on my head, and please forgive me. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Ramana Prabhu, you can have the last word, please.
Lord Nrsingadev, when Prahlad Maharaj prayed for mercy for his father, he said, not only your father, but how many generations back are all delivered because such a devotee as yourself appeared in the family. So we don't have to think that we have to offer pinda or, what we do if, like our loved one or family member, if they're cremated, we, can take their ashes or a portion of their ashes and bring them to the Ganges or to the Yamuna. That's very nice. But just by being a devotee, that everything is accomplished. Hare Krishna.
Om Tat Sat.
Even if they're as big of a demon as Hiranyakashipu.
Mahaprasade Govinda.
Which in most cases, they're probably not as bad as Hiranyakashipu.